under Standing Order 36. Deputy Mary Lou McDonald, please.
Taoiseach, Sinn Féin has called consistently and repeatedly on government to tackle the extortionate rents that are crippling workers, families and students. We told you the way to do this is by cutting rents through a refundable tax credit equivalent to 1 month's rent, and crucially by banning rent increases for 3 years. We were very, very clear. Both measures must go together to give hard-pressed renters the relief that they so desperately need. The tax credit for 1 month's rent would put a meaningful amount of money back in renters' pockets, and a ban would provide renters with the certainty that they won't be hammered by further rent hikes. And to work, the two measures must go hand in hand. And I've asked you directly on countless occasions to introduce these measures with urgency, and every time your answer has been no. And make no mistake, your refusal to act caused already unaffordable rents to spiral further out of control. So after leaving renters high and dry for years, yesterday you show up with a €500 annual tax credit. That's it. Completely ignoring the other part of the solution, a ban on rent increases. Now, Taoiseach, a €500 tax credit is better than nothing. And I have no doubt that those tenants who can avail of it will take what they can get as they struggle to make their rent. But let's be very, very clear. This won't make a dent for people paying average rents of over €2,000 per month or €24,000 a year in Dublin, or those paying nearly €1,500 a month or €18,000 per annum across the state. And crucially, Taoiseach, your tax credit is non-refundable. So those without a taxable income are left out. So who are they? You've left out students and you've left out low-income workers. And incredibly, you've done all of this without introducing a ban on rent increases. And as a result, renters have no certainty and no real protection. In the absence of a ban on rent increases, the 500 credit would be wiped out by further hikes. And this is true even in rent pressure zones. In fact, there is a real risk that without a ban on rent increases, your tax credit will in fact fuel a further rent hike. That's what you said yourself when I raised this matter with you in April. You said there was no guarantee that a credit would result in a reduction of rents. You said it would be inflationary. You said it would add to rent prices. So what's changed, Taoiseach? The truth is that despite your posturing, you've left the door wide open for more rent hikes, more exploitation and more hardship. A Taoiseach, ní haon de bart ciasa fada galore. Hep earth on cíntocht atá tastal a císeoirí a hurt trí cusc a chur ordú ciasa. Ní dhéanhí de credvas €200 ein rud mar beg sé caite tilla méide. Taoiseach, you've messed this up. And the renters of Ireland deserve much better than this half-baked measure. So I want you to correct it. That's what I want you to do. My question is very simple, Taoiseach. Will you give renters a real break by putting a month's rent back into their pockets through a refundable tax credit? And will you give renters the certainty and protection they deserve and need by banning rent increases for 3 years?
Thank you very much. Taoiseach, please.
Could I first of all say that since this government came into office, we have, just over 2 years ago, we've demonstrated our absolute commitment to do whatever is necessary to protect Ireland's society and Ireland's economy. That was clear during the pandemic, when we put in place unprecedented supports for people and for employers to keep jobs intact. And that's what's happened yesterday as well in terms of the presentations by Ministers McGrath and Minister O'Donoghue. And you have to look at the budget in its entirety. And because of the extraordinary efforts of the Irish people and the careful stewardship of this government, the economy recovered very strongly and gave us good capacity to navigate the very difficult and expensive winter ahead. And it's A pity the Deputy cannot acknowledge those basic facts. And every month you were looking for packages. And we resisted the pressure from you and Sinn Féin during the summer and so forth. And as a result now, and people can see this, we're using the resources and the capacity that we've derived from bringing the economy back to help the most vulnerable in our society. And if you look, the Fiscal Advisory Council this morning described Budget 2023 as sensible. Said the government had managed to direct resources to those who need it most, and more money is being targeted towards those people. In other words, it is a progressive budget. It's a fair budget. That view is supported by the data and careful analysis using the SRI's switch model, for example. That analysis found the budget to be, and I quote, strongly progressive. The winter cost of living measures alone will boost the net disposable income of the lowest income households by 5% compared to 0.7% for the highest income households. And the core budget 2023 package will boost the net disposable income of the lowest income households by 5.8% compared with 2.3% for the highest income households. And I say that to dispel the propaganda that you've been articulating since the budget was published yesterday. In relation to the rent tax credit that the government has introduced, it's 1,500 for this year, in 2022. People have paid their rent, but they'll be able to claim that there'll be a 500 tax credit on that for this year. And then next year, for 2023, 500 and on an ongoing basis. Your budget suggested 1,500, but based on 400,000 renters, your proposal would have an estimated cost of 600. So there's a massive hole in your provision. It's about a 300 million black hole in your housing plan. Your figures do not add up. But of course, in addition to the credit, and you mentioned students, for example, I mean, students will have 1,000 euros knocked off their fees this year, this academic year. And those on SUSI, likewise, will have a double payment before the end of the year. So there's been very strong support for students in relation to costs that they would otherwise incur, which you've completely ignored. And for many renters, by the way, the tax reductions, the income tax reductions, will be a very significant additional support to them also. And you just cannot take one item out of the budget and ignore all the rest in terms of the impact on individuals, be they renters, be they homeowners, be they on social welfare, be they pensioners. And we've expanded supports for pensioners as well and so forth, using a range of measures that in your budget you completely ignored, and you favour giving pensioners less. For some reason, in all your budget, you give pensioners less than others and so forth.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And the other key point on rents is
Time is up, Taoiseach, I'm afraid.
Your proposals would reduce the number of available lets and the number of houses that would be available for renting out.
So your record in office is this, that a housing crisis has morphed into a housing disaster. As a matter of fact, and for the record, annual rents on your watch since taking office, they're €3,600 annually more in Dublin, 2,800 annually more across the state. That's your record, and the facts speak for themselves. I am raising the issue of renters with you specifically, those who rent, those who are under pressure, those who were looking as you spread the largesse for the relief that we have been asking for years now. I've put this case to you for years. You showed up yesterday with something that is inadequate and flawed, and I want you to correct it. There are three design errors. Number one, €500 is not enough, not when you're facing the type of rents that people are paying. Number two, the tax credit is not refundable, and that means students and low-income workers are excluded. They don't get even the €500. And thirdly, and crucially, for this to work and for renters to have relief, there has to be a ban on rent increases for 3 years. And I am inviting you, Taoiseach, to correct the error in your proposals made yesterday.
Your proposals will drive more houses out of the rental market, will drive more houses out of the rental market. It's a fundamental flaw in your entire approach. You're ignoring the fact that every year less people are renting out houses. And the idea of the ban would have a detrimental impact, particularly over 3 years. You need to get real in terms of the market out there in respect of people leaving it. Why are people giving up and don't want to let out houses anymore? No, it's not. It's because of the endless vilification that people like Deputy O'Brien and others pile upon people on an ongoing basis.
I will adjourn. I will suspend the House if you continue. You, Deputy, you persistently interrupted the Minister when he was speaking. Please desist.
So the balance, there's a 2% limit on the rent pressure zones on rents as we speak, okay? And that is a reality. We have brought in a rent credit. We've allocated 400 million, okay? You've allocated 300 million for 1,500. Your figures do not add up. We've actually provided 400 million for 1,000. 500 this year and 500 next year. You only allocated 300.
Time is up.
Your figures do not add up, Deputy.
Now.